worried that the continuous security challenges and related attacks by bandits on towns, villages, communities in Foskari local government area have meted untold hardship on the people and have subjected the affected areas under serious survival threat.
Senator Bello Mandia drawing the attention of the upper chamber to the kidnapping of 38 members of his constituency on Sunday, January 31st, 2022, by gunmen. He wants the federal government to intervene urgently as the insecurity in his state and some parts of the country have reached alarming levels. It's a sentiment shared by his colleagues.
All the security agencies to come all non-hideouts of the kidnappers in a bid to rescue the 38 persons abducted by the government in Rongodia.
We have to really look at it critically. I suggest that, yes, to me, I'm saying that, yes, the security agent, of course, maybe we assume that they are doing their best, but to me, I think they need to do another best.
We want to see a difference because we have made a difference in terms of funding. I know funding alone will not be enough, but funding can make a difference, and we expect a difference in outcome.
Accordingly, the Senate urged the security agencies to rescue the 38 persons abducted by gunmen in Ruwangodia in Katsina State. It also called on the federal government to send enough military personnel and fighter jets to apprehend the bandits and restore normalcy in the affected areas. Meanwhile, the Senate examines a report by its Committee on National Security on the NSAS protest, which was hijacked by hoodlums in Calabar on October 23rd and 24th, 2020. Presenting the findings from its investigations, the committee chairman says public and private properties were vandalized by the hoodlums, and the police and other security agencies were overwhelmed by the sheer number of the attackers. The committee makes several recommendations.
That the federal government should evolve and implement holistic reforms in the Nigeria police that aimed at employing more able-bodied personnel, 2, providing adequate vehicles to the various commands, 3, injecting more financial resources, provision of adequate and relevant arms, ammunition, and the other policing gadgets.
On the matter of compensation to some serving and past lawmakers and politicians whose properties were destroyed, the Senate notes that the matter be forwarded to the state NSAS panel. Linda Akibi, Channels Television News.
Well, that's what we're discussing this morning, the issue of security. And you've seen the dailies, how that was a hot-button issue at the Senate. Let's quickly speak with Mr. Wilson Inaligu, who is a former AIG of Police and former CP, FCT, Ekiti, and Kogi Command. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
It's a pleasure for me to be here.
It's good to see you again.
Thank you.
Oh, well, I don't know. I'm sure you must have been following proceedings at the Senate yesterday, and part of what I'm sure you've seen the dailies, banditry, wake up to your duty, Senators military. You heard the Senate president saying, oh, we thought because we declared them terrorists, well, not the Senate, but at least the courts asked us to declare them terrorists, and they have been, and that has been gazetted as well. He thought they were going to go fast and hard against the bandits who have not been declared as terrorists, but it doesn't look like that is happening just yet. What are your thoughts with regards to where we're missing it when we talk about insecurity?
Well, the concern of the Senate and the entire Nigerian public is a genuine concern, because security is a precondition for sustainable development. And where we have insecurity, you are not going to have foreign direct investment and even local investments being destroyed. So security is so essential. But what is our approach like? I talk about the police. Do we recognize that the police primacy in internal security? What is the training that we have for them, like the capacity of the police? Or how are they adequately and appropriately equipped as befits a law enforcement agency of the size of the NPF? in terms of communication, in terms of welfare, in terms of promotion policy, in terms of accommodation. And so there are building blocks to having sustainable security, and it's about properly and adequately equipping the relevant security agencies, especially the NPF. And so all we are talking about is there are approaches you can have to all these issues of banditry, kidnapping, that fall mostly within the purview of basic law enforcement. But when you look at the situation that we have, do we have the equipment? Do we have even vehicles?
Give us an instance of things that when you just think about, they fall within the purview of basic law enforcement.
First of all, banditry, which is when you have theft or stealing by a large group of people, it graduates from basic theft to banditry. So basically, it's theft, but they are well equipped. But it doesn't really matter. What matters is having the appropriate training for our security agencies, especially the NPF, to be able to gather intelligence, intelligence-led policing, community partnership with the NPF and other relevant security agencies. But the question that I want to ask is, what equipment do you have available? For example, in Zamfara State, what have you provided for the police in that place? Let's say a police division. Like I always give cite example. You have a police station that the establishment should be 300 police officers. And in that establishment, you have only 70. And even these 70 that you have are not equipped. They don't have vehicles. I think recently they launched 700 vehicles. We have 774 local government areas. These 774 vehicles that you launched, if you have to give one to a police division, it cannot even go around. In the FCT, for example, you have AMAC having more than 15 or so police divisions, or even 30. I've forgotten the number because they keep increasing. Now, what vehicles do you have? So when you have your security agencies not properly trained, because the training institutions are in state of dilapidation, then what capacity can you build to be able to confront, even in terms of basic public other duties, basic crowd management, are they adequately equipped? How many water cannons do you have? And so you have a situation whereby there is a crowd. What do? You gather patrol teams. Oh, some people are gathering at Beggar Roundabout, and everybody is moving. They're carrying AK-47. And it's a crowd that is gathering, mustering to go and carry out, might be a peaceful demonstration. And here you have somebody coming with patrol vehicles all armed with AK-47. They may not have basic crowd control, the shield, the baton. And then you have people throwing stone. Maybe the guy doesn't have a ballistic helmet. One of them is hit by stone. And you see the reaction. The guy is carrying AK-47.
At that point,
yes,
when protesters start to throw stones. I mean, it's no longer a peaceful protest.
Exactly. But then there is there's proportionate response.
Indeed.
If the officers are adequately equipped, water cannon, they have a glass shield, the baton, the reaction, and then they have a helmet. It means the stone may not bring one down. But you see one down, as you are taking him to the vehicle, you could have given up the ghost. And the natural tendency of any person is to react. And the guy, what has he got? He's got AK-47. Therefore, you've got to adequately equip. When you send these officers out, do they have the right kits? And by that I say bulletproof vests, body armor, ballistic helmet, and then, so in every, but the that we have, the inadequacy of personnel, will not allow you. Because if you have, even to protect your division, even to have basic patrols, are you going to have that critical mass that you can deploy when you have such a situation? So when you are talking about police reform, you've got to build capacity. You've got to provide adequate and appropriate equipment, law enforcement equipment. And you see the situation that you think are so gigantic, so big, they get controlled without the use of lethal weapon. So adequacy, and I started it here in your station, that it's not where you have a DPO for a quarter, his allocation is 30,000. The man is not able to even fuel his vehicle. And have you asked yourself, how does he get money to maintain his vehicle?
So you tell us, I mean, you have been CP in 3 different states. I mean, if we're to count the FCTA as a state as well,
yes, that's true.
How was it? I mean, when you see this kind of talk, for instance, from the Senate, where people are upset about something that's happened in their constituency, they're angry and they bring it to the floor of the Senate, and there's a big debate around insecurity. As somebody who's in charge of perhaps a state that is maybe in the spotlight, how do you feel about those kinds of discussions? Do you feel frustrated? Do you feel like we're not yet serious to really address the problem? Do you feel under pressure? How do you think that those commissioners of police in those states are feeling right now?
Well, first of all, the state understandably is upset about what is going on. But the question I've always posed, how many of them have gone to visit police division? Might be in their constituency, in their senatorial zone. You take 3 police stations and go there, sit down with the DPO. One-on-one discussion. Tell me, what do you have? And what have they appropriated to the police? How much of that is released? I mean, it's very easy. Let me give you an example. As Commissioner of Police in the FCT, Commissioner of Police in the Atikiti, Commissioner of Police in Kogi, I know that you are privileged to be Commissioner of Police
in the FCT.
In the FCT. Why do I say that? We had a situation whereby there was a time the FCT administration purchased 90 406 vehicles for the Metropolitan Patrol. Again, they came at a time, they bought pickups. And so in the FCT, with our police hotlines at the time, then, and you make a phone call that you are in a distress situation, you could have 3, 4, 5 vehicles within 3 minutes.
You said then.
Well, I'm not. So what I'm trying to say
is there a disclaimer on the current situation?
No. I know. I talk to a situation that I'm very familiar with.
Okay.
Because then I was commissioner. I'm not commissioner of police. I'm not even a policeman.
I understand that.
So the point I'm trying to say is that you had those vehicles strategically deployed, and crime in FCT, without sounding immodest, crime in FCT, and you could go out there and ask. So equipment has a role to play. We had situations whereby you had 3 parallel demonstrations, and you could police them because you could deploy. And so you have 3, the UN recommendation, when you go on foreign mission, is 2 police or 3 police personnel to 1 vehicle. Is the standard. That is the international standard. So, but the situation you have in a division of 200 personnel, you have 2 service vehicles, and when they are moving the way they are shaking, they cannot even take you to the destination. So the question I ask, beyond going that, in terms of restructuring, rebuilding, which will lead to police reform, the internal organization, by way of supervision, by way of monitoring this thing, I think one thing that needs to be done, the AIGs are not involved in tactical policing. They are not involved in day-to-day policing. And so there should be an internal mechanism of supervision that you utilize the AIG offices, having inspections of compliance with professional standards, so that when you have situations that we have, and a state within the zone is experiencing, the AIG should be able to understand what are the policing inadequacies in that state in terms of attitude to work, in terms of equipment, and then given limited power, not having everything in the center. That means you don't have the IG taking every decision. The AIG zones should be able to control some level of funding or have their own arrangement whereby the states within their command can be equipped. So the situation whereby everything, and I tell you one thing, the DPO in my local government, in my, where ordinary resident in Benue, for a long time, that police division didn't have one patrol vehicle. And there was a crisis. Cultists straightened, and everybody was calling me. We had to call and call before we were able to get support from
Neighboring states.
Neighboring local government, from the area commander, the local government and everybody, before they were able to respond to that situation. There was no vehicle. Just because it was far from Abuja, I was going to send my own personal vehicle to go and help them. So just tell me. And in that crisis, about 3-4 people lost their life.
So
this is a Humini local government area. I'm saying it with an example. So equipment.
Well, when we talk about police reforms, they're not technical things. They are basic things. I mean, you've talked about equipment,
Yes.
for instance. I was trying to draw on your experience as a former commissioner of police. Yes. You've only spoken about your experience as a commissioner of police here in the FCT. What was it like in other states? Because we see a situation whereby other states are involved in the purchase of equipment. I mean, some of the visuals which we just rode online now for our viewers is purchase of police vehicles by a state government. What is it usually like in other states, especially when these vehicles are... Were the vehicles bought when you were CP in Kogi and Ekiti? Yeah,
before I got to Kogi, the government bought plenty patrol vehicles, which they donated to the military, to civil defense, and to the police. And they gave. When I was in Ekiti, I only met those vehicles I met on ground. But you cannot... The states don't have that level of funding that is available to the Federal Capital Territory or Lagos. So Lagos, Rivers, FCT, those states say that when we discuss among commissioners of police, you know that this was in terms of equipment, in terms of capacity and all that. But the state governments are doing their best, but that is not enough. The Senate, or the National Assembly rather, have got to make provision. They've got to go down the line as part of their oversight. The oversight shouldn't stop at big ministries alone, but go to that police division in your local government, in your senatorial zone, and ask them what quantity of fuel is provided for you monthly or weekly. Because the 30,000 can't service the vehicles.
So some people will argue that, you know, if they're going to go around divisions, I mean...
No, they don't need to.
They're going to argue which one of the divisions will they go to. No. I don't know, but we have here with us Senator Hali Rujika, who is the Chairman, Senate Committee on Police Affairs. You're welcome to our studios this morning. Good morning. And you walked in just when we were talking about shifting focus to the National Assembly. Yes. You have asked for genuine police or holistic police reforms. Yes. What was the Senate thinking when it was talking about holistic? What does it mean by holistic police reforms?
Yeah, you may recall that at the beginning of the life of this 9th Senate, there was a resolution on the floor of both the Senate and the House of Representatives as part of our legislative agenda to restructure the entire security architecture of this country. We've taken a lot of resources from our legislative time and resources, and we've invited all critical stakeholders, that is the security agencies and those principal actors in the security business, to participate and make their own contributions. At the end of the day, we come up with a report and we transmit same to the executive, waiting for implementation. So we feel that more has to be done. That is why yesterday on the floor of the Senate, you will see Senator Gobir laying a report, a joint report on the NSAS crisis that took place across the country. We were able to pass into law the Police Act, amending the Police Act, because since 2004, there's never been any major repeal or amendment on the Police Act. But this Ninth Assembly, we were able to amend all those gray areas, especially those areas that impinge on the right of citizens of Nigeria. We were able to amend that. Even the issue of the gender discriminality in the force, whereby maybe a female officer is the most qualified or the most senior, maybe to occupy a force of a commissioner, a position of a commissioner. Then because she's a lady, they will go and now send a man to do that, who is a junior officer to her. That has been addressed in the new act. And other areas are like the issue of sub-target. When a person commits a crime and run away, then they will go for the next person to him, or whether his relative or his brother. That has been addressed also. So there are so many things. More than 100 clauses were addressed in the new act, the 2020 Act. And it's still back in the Senate and in the House of Representatives for further amendment. Like we have issue between the House of Representatives and the Senate, where the Senate put Stephen and maybe a 50,000 naira for the police, for the community policing, because the act says it's voluntarily. So, but we just feel it is okay if we put some Stephen for them to be able to motivate them to do the job. So, when getting to the House, it was deleted. So the bill is now with us for further legislative action.
Okay. So when we look at some of the recommendations, you've talked about how you have been able to amend the Police Act, and that should lead the way forward. But it looks like some of the things that, you know, there's a gap between the law and what is actually on the ground. And it is because of what is on the ground in terms of the insecurity that people feel that these matters continue to make their way to the National Assembly. Yes. Speaking here with Mr. Analigo, he's talked about how some of the issues in terms of basic things like equipment are not available at the divisions, and so these are some of the things that are not that are hindering the progress of the police in terms of performing their duties. Is there anything that your committee is doing to address that?
Yeah, I heard him mentioning that the National Assembly should go down to the constituents or to the divisions to see what is happening. I chaired this committee in the House of Representatives when I was in the House of Representatives. That is the 8th Assembly. I went around all the divisions, most of the commands and some of the divisions. I sampled them because there are a lot of them. When I went to one of the divisions, what we found out is that only 35 or 38,000 naira that goes to division as running costs. And as at then, our calculations are what is even required to fuel the patrol vehicles in the country effectively is 28 billion naira. And as it is then, the overhead, the total overhead of the police was just 8 billion naira. You are not talking about the ammunitions. Those consumables, like the tear gas, which exposed the weakness of the police during this NSAS protest. And a lot of equipment. We're not even talking about welfare, which is very important. So that is why we see it's necessary to come up or to devise a means of extra fund to the police. We now come up with the Police Trust Fund Act. Now it's a bill, and it's already in existence. So the whole aim of that bill or act is to provide training, retraining, equipment, and welfare. And you see, in the life of 5th, 6th, 7th Assembly, such moves were made by President Umaru Yar'Adua and President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan. But it all expired with the life of those assemblies. It is only now that we're able to get it right, because the first police reform that was done, Lagos state government and Rivers state government went to court and says that the federal government cannot go ahead and deduct money as source.
Yes, the Rivers state government just won a judgment on the court.
Exactly, it's happening the same thing for this act now. Only Rivers state government went to court. That is double jeopardy on them. They have their existing state trust fund. So, but the act is an act of National Assembly. We passed it, and we restrict the source of funding not only to the consolidated revenue account, but to the federation account, to the revenue accruing to the federation account. So, but anything that is before the competent court of law, I'm not allowed to.
Well, I think that case has been decided, and the judgment has been given in favor of Rivers State.
Not yet.
I know that for a fact. The judgment has been given in favor of Rivers State, and it was just Rivers State. That was last week. Just last week.
Yeah, but the police trust fund are going to appeal for stay of execution, and they're going to appeal the case. So we can't. It's still a pending case in the court.
Well, it has not yet been appealed, to the best of our knowledge. As we know, a judgment has been given.
I'm not the spokesperson of the police, but I know they're doing something.
I know that we have the reaction of the Rivers State government in that regard. Perhaps as the program progresses, we'll certainly play that back for you. But let's flip this to Lagos, and I'm sure my colleagues have questions for you, gentlemen.
Oh, yes, thank you, Mark. Well, Senator, in consideration of all that is going on at the moment, where your colleague in the Senate spoke about holistic police reforms, essentially highlighting training, manpower, recruitment, appropriate, doing all of those basic things right, which was also highlighted in all the 142 clauses or pages of the Police Act 2020, which you also spoke about. So doesn't that then tell us that it appears as though, look, in spite of all those things that have happened, it appears as though we're papering over cracks, that we're not addressing the real issues, because the country consistently keeps talking about reorganization of the policing structure. We just heard Mr. Nadeku talk about the AIG is not being involved enough, and several other matters like that. Shouldn't we sit back and have a second look and find out what we need to do to ensure that policing actually goes from the grassroots up?
Thank you, Chamberlain. You see, the major problem with the police is funding. Police cannot be funded under this current budget structure that we have, and we don't expect them to perform magic. They're still on the envelope, sealed envelope. And as I'm talking to you now, the last year's budget of the overhead of the police was we were able to jack it up to 28 billion naira. But the envelope come for this year's budget, it was 18 billion naira. And this is the election year that the police will need that overhead for their operation, in preparation for ahead of the 2023 election. So the police cannot be funded through the national budget. We have to devise a means, which it all contains in our report that we submit to the executive. That is for the restructuring of the entire security architecture in Nigeria, especially the internal security. That has to be done before we'll now come and say, okay, we want a major reform in the police. Funding is the major problem facing the Nigerian police.
At the moment, is it that because state governors continue to fund the police in spite of the amendments that has happened, so it's those funding challenges you highlighted, is it sufficient such that state governors don't need to get involved? Because many of them say, look, we do a lot of all of this funding. How come we can't have a lot more role other than just this? Because they want to do more, but they feel they can't, given the way the police structure is presently constituted.
As I said, there's a limit to what the state governors can do. As we're talking now, the money for the trust fund that was deducted at source is now trapped in an escrow account in the Ministry of Finance. The police cannot even access those funds. We are able to gotten about 75 billion naira, which over 50 billion naira is being trapped. And the Police Act is supposed, the Police Trust Fund supposed to last for the period of 6 years, which already 2.5 years is gone, and nothing has been done because of this litigation.
All right, we'll just come back in a moment and talk a little more about some of these concerns, look at best practices, and how should we go. Stay with us. Welcome back, Senator Jika. Could you tell us, because I mean, even up until this morning, several groups were still harping on the fact that they want some consideration or debate about local government, state police, just real structuring the police in that manner. So what is wrong in having that debate about whether or not we should have states, local government, and federal police?
Yeah, thank you very much. You see, we cannot achieve that without addressing the problems of the national police, that's the federal police. When you talk about state police or local government police, you're subjecting it to abuse by those in charge of them. And we very well know the peculiarity of this country, of our nation. So we just have to be careful. We have to address the problem of the Nigerian police first before we'll now start thinking of state police or local government police. Just as it's working in America, the Federal Bureau is in charge. Wherever in the situation whereby a state police is investigating a crime, if they perceive or sense any impartiality, the FBI will now jump in and take over the case. So we have to get the police right before we now start thinking of state and local government police.
But Senator, NSAS protests happened partly because of the decades of abuse that has gone on with the policing structure as presently constituted. So which abuse, what further abuse can be bigger than this one? And even if that were the case, as you highlighted, talking about addressing those concerns. So if we debate that, won't we come up with suggestions concerning how it should be structured? That would be part of the conversation.
Yeah, Chairman, as I said earlier, we have one of the best police in Nigeria. It's there in the International Police Index. In the world, we have one of the best police. And as I told you, it is only if we were able to address those issues before we will now think of going for state police. You may recall that in this Police Act, the first issue is, in the Police Trust Fund, the first issue is training and retraining. Some of these officers, when they receive the first training in the inception of their career, they don't get any training. So this retraining is very important. So it is only when we are able to address those things, we'll now start thinking of going for second option. That is the state police.
Well, let me
I will advise the executive to take that report of the National Assembly, that is the 9th National Assembly, both House and the Senate, to advising them to restructure the entire security architecture of this country. Everything is contained in that report.
Okay. Well, Mr. Inalegu, this question is for you. You've heard all kinds of arguments, and you have talked about this morning that the most crucial issue for the police right now is funding. And from and you also said that the numerical strength of the police isn't sufficient to tackle the issues. I mean, some of them, all of the numbers, some of them are in the offices, some of them do, clerical work for the force, some are attached to, VIPs at different levels all over the nation. So one of the questions that I want to ask is, how many then do we have to do the real job of policing all over the country? But the question that I want to ask you right now is, the argument against state police, local government police, and all of that, notwithstanding, the police gets funding from states. They help with the funding, provide equipment, provide infrastructure for the police and all of that. What stronger argument could there be for the states to control their own police or have another layer of policing altogether different from the Nigeria police, such that the states can now take advantage of them, fund them the way they have been funding the police, so that they can take care of the local issues that they have on their heads?
I think the same question asked the senator is what I have reframed, if I may say that. Nobody is saying state police is this or state of that. I think what the distinguished senator has said, which I align myself totally with, is we've got to build the National Police Force, the NPF, because the NPF is supposed to bet some of these police forces, either local government or state. And I think there is enough provision.
My sincere apologies, Mr. Nalego. Just a second. This conversation around the police has been on for decades. And I'm sure that some of the issues that we're talking about now, we're not talking about them for the first time. For instance, what is the number of policemen per population, category, by world standards? Are we even close to that? That's part of the argument that I'm saying. If the funding, as you mentioned, is the challenge, I mean, what is wrong with taking on that right here and now? Because are we saying then that the lives of Nigerians, the welfare and protection of their properties have to wait for another, 10, 20 years until we get the Nigeria Police Force right?
Let me say something. I don't think you should see policing as about carrying guns and APCs. Policing is not just about carrying guns and all that. Policing is much more than that. Now, if you have been following the trend and conversation on policing, there is a provision in the community policing strategy that has been implemented by NPF that the state governments, the supernumerary constable, the spy, as they call them, that provision is there. But the only difference is that they operate under the supervision of the NPF. That means a state government or the FCT, through the community policing initiative, could have this personnel operating in their local areas. Let me give you an example. In FCT, in Buhari, you recruit persons from Buhari, and then they are put as local policing force, but they are not armed, but they must operate under the NPF. But those ones, the federal government will pay a certain number, while the state government will take responsibility of paying the other number. I am aware that some recruitments were done, about 3,000 or so people in the FCT or even more, but the FCT administration will not pay more than a certain number. Yes, if you are really desirous of security for your personnel, this could become force multiplier even for the NPF. So the idea of, and as a commissioner of police, the governor cannot give you direction that there is a crisis in the local government, and you say you want to wait for the IG to give you instruction before you deploy to that local government. But when you are asked that a complaint is brought, arrest this person, the policeman will always ask, sir, Your Excellency, what is his offense? And this becomes an issue. That their chief security officer, because even the police, even with their powers, the Constitution provides that whoever is arrested is entitled to be informed of the offense for which is alleged. And this becomes an issue in some instances that the Commissioner of Police is seen as disobedient to the Chief Security Officer. So we've got to understand some of these things. So the Community Policing Initiative has made provisions. A company like Shell, they have spy, some banks, WAEC. And these people, if you go to the Nigeria Security Printing and Minting, they wear uniform that is almost like the NPF. And they are there performing their duty. So I think the state governments and local government should key into the community policing initiative and see and identify individuals within their respective communities that will be screened by the Commissioner of Police through the office of his OC community policing and bring these individuals. These individuals operating in the various communities acting as force multipliers will provide necessary intelligence that will be utilized in nibbling in the bud certain crimes, in carrying out raid operations. So I think there is a provision that can be utilized as a stopgap until we build the police, because the NPF as presently constituted needs a lot of support, because when you have that, then the other police forces that will come up will perform that role.
Right.
So insecurity is not because the NPF is controlled centrally. I don't agree, because no commissioner of police that you are told there is a crisis that will not deploy. But the disagreement comes when arrest John. Sir, what has John done? And that becomes an issue.
And then the commissioner gets reposted. Into some of the issues we have seen. But let me take this back to Senator Jika, because there were talks about, you know, the state police being scrapped from the planned constitution review, because we still have a window, actually, to have these conversations, whether or not that's the way to go. We need to have that conversation. So is that true, that this is no more being considered in the constitution review? I'm talking about state police.
Thank you very much. We're on the final leg of the Constitution Review, which I'm a member of the Constitution Review Committee. We're going to do the retreat today. Well, the retreat will start today and end off on Monday. So as the AIG is saying, the retired AIG was saying, you see, there was a presidential directives at the inception of this administration that at least 10,000 men and women be recruited into the force every year. And that has been going on. And also, on the issue of community policing, the first proposal was to recruit 40,000 men and women into the community system, which it is the community that will be fully involved in selecting their own sons and daughters to man that community, or to serve as aid of the police in that community. Already, you may recall that President Muhammadu Buhari approved about 13.7 billion naira to that effect. I invited the AIG in charge of that department yesterday to have a chat with him in my office. And what I heard was very shocking. As I'm talking to you, only 50% of that fund was released to them. And those people are there performing their duty diligently in their various communities across the country. And these were being selected by those, maybe the district heads or the village heads or the chiefs of that areas. So, as I was saying earlier, the issue is funding as at when due to the police. And with that, all of the problem will be addressed.
So my question is for the constitution review. I mean, we know the president's, his stance when it comes to state police, but for the National Assembly, specifically the constitution review, has it been removed?
Yes.
From that, has state police been removed?
It has not been removed. It has not been removed. We are representative of the people. And we were, as members of that committee, we went around our various constituencies and interact and have a town hall meeting with all our constituents and get their own views, which we are already discussing at the committee level. And I believe that will come up. Most of the senators and most of the members of the House of Reps are for that, and some are not for that. So I don't know it is, let's wait for the outcome of the constitutional review.
All right, Marwa.
Well, as we proceed now, I mean, what do you think? Because you have said that the Senate has made some good grounds in terms of amending the Police Act. So the problem right now is not the law enabling the police,
yes,
or even the framework for which the police, within which the police is supposed to act. The question now is, what do you then see as the gap between what you have now done in the Senate and what is currently on ground with our police, especially with regards to securing lives and property?
Yeah, the major thing now is for the executive to step up and take the police out of the envelope budget and devise other source of funding the police, because our budget cannot fund this police that we have in this country. So it is very important that the federal government define the means of funding the police outside the police budget, which is one step that we made by enacting the Police Trust Fund Act.
So you've spoken about the Police Trust Fund, and we're talking about whether or not it was in court. I mean, you mentioned a few states that went to challenge it.
Yes.
After the judgment was given by the FCT High Court, challenged by the River State government, the River State governor did give a reaction to that victory for River State, and he said that, in summary, I'm trying to see if I can summarize his thoughts now. What he said his words, what he said was that he's not against the Police Trust Fund, and he doesn't think that states should be excluded from funding it, but it's the manner in which the federal government has gone about it, that it seems that there is a mandatory deduction, and it ought not to be that way. Do you think that there's going to be another approach to seeking the support of states in seeking to fund the police, especially since people believe that those who pay the piper, they take the tune, and it ought not to be that way if the states cannot have any control over the police?
Yeah, I'm not a lawyer, but all I know is that the act giving powers to the Police Trust Fund is the Act of National Assembly, which is constitutionally and properly done. And I don't know what is the exact formulation of the law, but what we have done is the right thing. I don't know under which rule or law that the River State government is relying to go through the court to seek redress on that. But what we have done and what the executive done is right. Yeah, I told you something happened in the last administration when the same River State goes to court. But as at then, the source of funding was on the whole, that's the consolidated revenue account. But what we try to do is we try to restrict it to the federation account so that we will reduce the involvement of the states on the source of funding. So the federal government have powers on the federation account, while the consolidated revenue account is owned by the states, local government, and the federal government, including the legislature and the judiciary.
Did you seek the support of the states in passing in that function of the Police Trust Fund?
Come again?
Did you seek the support of the states when you were, did you see the input of the states?
That is what I told you, that the first, the bill was introduced in the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th Assembly. It all expired with the life of those assemblies because we are not able to get the support of those states.
Okay.
That is why we do it differently in the 9th Assembly, by restricting it to the Federation.
Okay, we'll see what the details of that, of what the victory is, but I do know that judgment has been passed in that particular matter and it was given in favor of River State. How hopeful are you, let me ask you, Mr. Naligo, how hopeful are you, despite the hitches and the setback it suffered, that the Police Trust Fund could be the bridge between what has now been passed in terms of the Police Act and improving the security of lives and property and seeing a more efficient police force, which is what we desire?
I think the Police Trust Fund intervention is an excellent move and is going to address very significantly some of the funding challenges of the NPF. My appeal, therefore, state government should allow the Police Trust Fund function because we need an effective police force, effective and efficient police force. Since we have identified funding as a challenge, my appeal therefore...
Is it the biggest challenge, funding?
It remains because all is tied. Welfare, equipment, training, accommodation, even promotion is tied to availability of funds. So funding is a significant factor in policing. Policing is quite expensive. Even in intelligence gathering, are you able to even give money to those detectives, operatives, to be able to develop sources within their respective communities? So funding remains central to effective policing.
Well, at this point, I have to thank you, gentlemen, for coming to bear your thoughts on our program this morning. Senator Hale Rujika is the Chairman, Senate Committee on Police Affairs. Thank you for coming. And Mr. Wilson Inaligu is a former AIG of Police and former CP here in the FCT, Insecurity and Kogi Commands. Thank you so much for coming as well.
Pleasure is mine.
Well, we'll take a break at this moment and we'll be coming back to talk about politics. Something is brewing in the APC and you might be interested to know just what that is. Please stay with us.